I've spoken to you several times about the phenomenon of the American frontier's version of Christianity. I don't think we recognize the strange historical event that created this situation where homesteaders and pioneers, as recent as the mid 1800s, even in the Midwest of the United States and then into the far West, were people utterly cut off from their roots. They had memories of the religion they were cradled in, but they were alone in the wilderness of their environment, creating towns and schools and churches out of nothing, out of a lawless environment, bringing some semblance of civilization. We all know that history. What we don't realize is that the form of Christianity generated out of that environment was completely uprooted and disconnected with its origins. You add on to that much of the influence of what came to this country were Protestants, sects, Anabaptists, those rejected or persecuted in their own countries, who came and populated the colonies and moved out west. So that not only was it a haven for fragments of religious phenomena generated by the history in the old country, but then assumed to be the face of religion. So that by the time we enter the 20th century, our great-grandparents, our grandparents, our parents, all are influenced by this sort of atmosphere of a certain kind of religion that becomes the fundamentalist, the literalistic, the judgmental, the hell and damnation, all that we know in this country to be Christianity that we see on television, that comes out of the little church on the corner, that is made known to us by generations before us. And unless we have an ethnic connection that is rooted in either the Catholic faith or even more rarely the Orthodox faith, we have nothing to go on. And the vast majority of Americans assume that this is religion, with no sense of the history, the culture in which it was shaped. For instance, one of the so-called Great Awakening moments of the 1830s that gave rise to new strands of some form of Protestantism is known by scholars to come out of this rediscovery of the religious fervor from the farmers and others who were out there on their own with nothing but hard work to survive with, and who, in rediscovering something that they called religion, would behave in very strange ways, such as barking up trees would be one manifestation of this bizarre psychological phenomenon of people who had been totally disassociated with that which was so fundamental to their nature. And out of that charismatic revival came all these sort of disfigured versions of Christianity, with no guidance, no reference to the great master teachers of the faith, descending from the apostles, who made very clear, who gave their lives for the foundations of the teachings. None of that was present. All they had was a book, which inevitably became a magic book. And then you add Martin Luther. This is one man's idea of sola scriptura, only scripture alone. Forget all the great teachings and traditions and developments of the church from early Christianity, and that eventually becomes the kind of fundamentalism that we are familiar with today, and which is rightly rejected by an educated population. But what they are rejecting is not Christianity, but this bizarre development or disintegration even of what was Christianity that came to us out of the Middle East in the first centuries and devolved into this due to all the historical shifts that have taken place. So if we want to be honest about these matters, we cannot look to a certain kind of American version of Christianity and say, okay, that's it, throw the baby out with the bathwater. Because that is not Christianity. That is what has sprouted out of frontier America, unbound by any kind of, uninformed by any of the great geniuses of the teachings, the great saints and holy ones of the faith, and the mother church, if you will, which against all the horrors of history sustained the authenticity and the fullness of the truth handed down from the beginnings. So what has occurred then in rejecting this version of Christianity that is in our culture and walking away from it, there is no doorway back into Christianity, and therefore people go searching here and there religions and spiritualities of other cultures and worlds, thinking that perhaps if they shave their heads, put on a toga, that will somehow make them spiritual, and so many other odd forms of behavior rather than the inward reality of cleansing, healing, and transformation, and spiritual awakening. And what is important in this moment in time, when this Christianity of Protestantism in all its varied forms is disintegrating and is no longer acceptable by people of the 21st century with any kind of understanding and education. Rather than sweeping it all away, recognize that there always was another option that is now emerging in our time and on this continent, and that is the Eastern Orthodox original faith, which didn't make it to the American frontier until immigrants in the end of the 19th century, early 20th, brought it with them to very specific parts of the country, the Steel Belt and others like that, and which stayed insulated until now. But today we have more and more converts, more and more seekers finding their way against all odds into this fullness of Christianity, which is holistic and spiritually transformative and highly mystical, and which has nothing to do with the Christianity of one's grandparents or the one sold to us presented to us by the culture. So I invite you to have real integrity on this path of searching and to rediscover for yourselves that which was for so long unavailable. We have now in English books of all kinds that speak of Christianity we have never heard of. In the 70s, there were no such books, maybe one or two in English. Now they are available. So there is no excuse to not seriously explore this completely different kind of Christianity. Again, so foreign to your grandparents' version, and find for yourself what it really is before moving on to other things that may not give you that which is ultimate and truly life-giving.